Hi everyone, welcome to the visual guide for the Aetherfont. This is the newest MSQ dungeon made available by patch 6.4 in Final Fantasy XIV, The Dark Throne. If you're shocked by mechanics and find yourself getting body slammed by the bosses, I'm here to help you stem the tide. My name is Miztech and I'll be your dungeon guide. In this first area, you'll have two sections of trash mobs that can be picked up and AoE'd down. Watch your feet for those AoE attacks and try not to get too distracted by the adorable polar bears living their best lives all around you. The first boss is Ling Baker. This giant salamander will begin by casting Upsweep, dealing high group-wide damage. He'll cast this throughout the encounter, so healers be ready. When the boss turns to face a random player and casts Tidal Breath, all players must quickly move behind him to avoid the massive frontal cleave. The boss will then move into the center of the room and begin to cast Body Slam. This will do mild group-wide damage and form a number of ice clusters around the platform. During the next Upsweep cast, the attack will also cause the ice clusters to begin resonating, indicating that they will soon explode in wide AoE circles around them. Players will need to move to a section of the platform not affected by these ice clusters to avoid getting hit. The next Body Slam will form much larger ice clusters around the platform. Upsweep will again cause these to resonate and eventually explode. However, these clusters are much bigger and the resultant explosions covers much more ground. Players will again need to find a section of the platform away from the ice clusters to avoid getting hit. The boss can also cast Floodstide, which will target all players with AoE circle markers. Players will need to spread apart to avoid overlapping AoEs. Immediately after, a player will be targeted by the stack marker and players will need to stack up to share the incoming damage. The next Body Slam will form both small and large ice clusters covering the entirety of the platform. The smaller clusters will explode first and players can first move to dodge the small explosions before quickly repositioning out of the way of the bigger ice cluster explosions. Sonic Bloop will target the tank with a high damage tank buster. Cooldown and heal through as necessary. At this point, these mechanics will repeat until the boss is down. The next section of trash has more mobs to pick up and destroy and some of the prettiest background scenery in the entire game. Look at this. Gorgeous. Watch out for those AoE attacks as you burn everything down. The second boss is Arcus Battle Cry will deal group-wide damage. Shield and heal as necessary. Throughout the fight, the boss will face a random direction and cast Lightning Leap. A large AoE circle will appear that all players should avoid. The boss will land in this area and lightning cracks will appear across the platform. The boss will then cast another Lightning Leap in another direction. As this is happening, the leftover lightning cracks will explode in wide attacks. Players will need to stand in between the cracks to avoid getting hit for high damage and debuffs. Ripper Claw will target the tank for high damage. Cooldown and heal as necessary. Spinning Claw is a large point-blank AoE attack that players should move away from. This attack will also leave behind 4 lightning cracks over the platform that will soon explode. Move away to avoid getting zapped. The next Battle Cry will also form a ring around the outer edge of the arena, limiting the safe area that players have to work with. The boss will then cast multiple Lightning Rampage, jumping to random sections of the platform and forming more lightning cracks. Players will have to continuously reposition to avoid both the circle rampage leaps and the exploding cracks of lightning until the platform returns to normal. A random player will be targeted with this Lightning Claw stack-up marker. The group will need to stack together to share the incoming damage. This attack will also leave behind a circle of lightning cracks, and all players will need to move away from this area before it explodes again. Electric Eruption will deal high group-wide damage and form 3 lightning crack circles around the platform. Shield and heal through the damage and avoid these areas until they explode. These mechanics will repeat until the boss is down. One last section of trash with more AoE attacks to avoid as you burn them down. The last boss is OCTA Mammoth. You'll notice 5 circle platforms around the boss and a number of tentacles all over the arena. Tidal Roar will deal high group-wide damage throughout the encounter. Healers beware. Octostroke will have all of the tentacles repositioning around the arena to attack the platforms directly in front of them with massive circle attacks. Players will need to find the one platform that doesn't have any tentacles pointing at it to avoid getting hit for high damage and debuffs. Afterwards, the tentacles will then cast Wallop, a large frontal line attack directly in front of them. Move away as necessary. When the boss casts Vivid Eyes, a large donut AoE will appear around him that must be avoided. The tentacles are continuously casting Wallop during this time, so be sure to find a safe spot between all of the attacks to avoid getting hit. Saline Spit will form orbs over the center of each platform before exploding in platform-wide AoE circles. Players will need to move into the areas between each platform to avoid getting hit. Throughout the encounter, the boss will face a random direction and begin to cast Tidal Breath. All players will need to move to the side of the boss to avoid getting hit by the massive frontal attack. Rotate around the platforms until you pass the flank indicator on the hitbox to ensure you're out of the way enough before the attack goes off. When the boss casts Telekinesis, it'll tether to 3 crystal clusters outside the platform area that will target 3 platforms with these red laser lines. Players will need to move away from these affected platforms to avoid getting hit. The boss can also face another random direction and begin to cast Breathstroke, while the tentacles all begin to cast Clear Out. Players will first first have to move to the side of the boss to avoid the frontal attack from the boss. The tentacles will each do frontal cleaves, and players will have to find the section of the safe platforms that are also safe from the tentacle cleaves. When targeted by these pink markers, all players will need to spread apart to avoid overlapping damage. Make sure to dodge the boss attacks at the same time. All of these mechanics will repeat with some overlap until the boss is down. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Up next, we'll continue on with the MSQ into the next trial encounter. As always, thanks for watching.